USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Our sponsor for this episode is the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Well, it's getting to be old hat almost that an Atlantic Hockey 16th seed takes down the number 1 seed. And the latest team to do that last season was American International.
And joining on this week's USCHO Spotlight is the head coach of American International. That's Eric Lang. Eric, welcome to the show. A great weekend last weekend against Bentley on the road, 2 wins. How do you like your team so far?
You know what, guys? Appreciate you having me on. We come into the season with playing with some expectations, maybe for the first time in our program history here. And, one thing we've learned a little bit early is it's a little different to hunt than to be the hunted. But you know what, we actually, felt like we were playing much better than what our record says, that it was. And we've lost a couple games in league where we held our opponent for under 15 shots. So we were kind of, it's human nature here for our guys to kind of be looking and being disappointed with the result. But we've kind of, not to be cliche, but we've stayed process driven here. And I think where we are right now is kind of where we expected to be. And, I actually just looked at it prior to, we're 2 games ahead of the pace we were at last year. So, 11-5-1 in Atlantic Hockey, we'll sign up for that.
I bet you would. You touched on a little bit there at the beginning and expectations. And when you get that bullseye on your back, I don't want to think that any team would take another team lightly or kind of, put that accusation out there. But it happens. These are still players that are 18 to 23, 24 years old. It's human nature that sometimes you just say, oh, this should be a win. When you're the team that everybody expects to get their best game from, you tend to get your opponent's better or best game. What is that like night in, night out, knowing that you're not going to walk into a team that's going to take you for granted anymore, and that it's a different world of hockey for AIC? No,
and you know what? We'd rather it that way, and our guys have earned that. And I let our guys know, like, pressure is a privilege here. And to play with some expectation, we should embrace that. That's a great thing. And you know what? We've been on the other side of it. I remember 2-3 years ago, being in the other side of that locker room and measuring ourselves against the Air Forces and the RITs and just saying, hey, this is what it looks like, guys. This is what the top of the league looks like. And you start, you find these little ways to kind of motivate your hockey team, because it's a long season. And so, I'd be, a fool to think that isn't happening to us. And we're starting to embrace that. And I really like the way we've played since we've been back here.
I want to look a little bit at your roster and start up front and the guys that are scoring goals for you. You've got some guys that have, decent numbers in goals. I look at Tobias Flavely, 9 goals, Hugo Reinhardt, 7 goals, Elijah Barriga, 7 goals. A few guys with 5 goals. You've got Blake Christensen back as a senior, a phenomenal year last year. Maybe not at that same point this year, but where do you find your offense? And it does seem like you're spacing it out maybe a little more than you were last year, that there's a little bit more depth in some lines. Is that a benefit as a coach to know that you don't have to count on just 1 or 2 lines?
No, it's a great observation. And to be honest with you, Blake had a brilliant season last year, and we've asked him to do some things away from the puck and where his offense may take a little hit, but his overall game is really improving for us. And you know what, we've always been a little bit of score by committee, and I'm not sure we have a first line, but I'm not sure we have a fourth line either. I think the way we're built right now is we got 2 2s and 2 3s, or however you want to kind of dissect the numbers, but we expect to get production from the bottom of our lineup, and we're really balanced in terms of getting offense from our defensemen as well. Brendan Kapchuk, Pat Demel, Nico Luca, Janis Jaks. Those are four guys like on any given shift can take the puck end to end and provide offense for us. So yeah, we kind of string it together. I personally like it that way. We don't get caught up in matchups, and we're not caught up in what other teams or how they want to defend our better guys. We feel like, hey, we're going at you with four lines, and we're going to wear you down and keep coming at you. And that's the way we're built here.
A year ago, a lot of people didn't know the name Zacharias Skog as a goaltender on your back end, and he obviously made a great name for himself. You've given him a lot of the time this year, but Stefano Durante as well, getting some appearances. He's a junior. What have you liked about your two goaltenders? I look at their numbers, the save percentages, both right around or above 920. Goals against average is right around 2. How's your back end been?
You know what? That old adage they used to say, if you have two, you really don't have one. Well, we don't feel like that. Zach obviously won some huge games here for our program, and he looks like a legitimate pro prospect for us. And 2 weeks ago, he breaks a finger in a fluky play in practice, and now we've got to hand the ball to Steph, who was an all rookie Atlantic hockey goaltender, and our hockey, we haven't missed a beat. And you couldn't be further extreme. One guy's 6'5", the other guy's barely 6 foot, and their styles are vastly different. But they've been excellent. And I will say this: the thing that I like to measure our hockey team on is how hard we defend and how well we defend. And you look at our goals against right now in Atlantic hockey; they're staggeringly low. And I think it's a credit to the guys that are in front of them. They're obviously making some great stops, and they're holding up their end of the bargain. But AIC hockey, we pride ourselves in how hard we defend. And it'll always start there for us. And our goals against totals right now, as I just mentioned there, are really low, and we're really proud of that.
Our guest is AIC head coach Eric Lang. Your alma mater was founded to help educate international students. And when you go to a game with AIC, you get a line chart that has flags from all the nations the players are from, which is a nice touch. So you've done a lot of recruiting internationally. As I mentioned one time, you've put the international back in AIC. What's your approach to finding players, and how did you come about to recruit from all over the globe?
4 years ago, we looked at our program and we understand some of the obstacles that we have as a program. And, the line I use is we can try and do it like Boston College and do it better than them, or we've got to try and do it differently than how everybody was doing it. And we went with the international route, and we were in places that nobody else was. And I think we have 10 or 11 European players in our program, and the one thing we found out is good European players want to play with other good European players, and so we've now stumbled into a little bit of a pipeline here, and it's been really, really good to us. And a couple of things that happens when you're over there. They don't, when you grow up in Sweden or you grow up in the Czech Republic, you don't necessarily grow up idolizing the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Boston universities, Boston colleges of the world. Those are still foreign places to them. So, we've kind of found our niche, and, it was very calculated when we did it. We didn't know how it was going to work out, but we certainly believe we've got to return our investment. And they're wonderful kids. They're wonderful kids to coach. They're believe it or not, they're my better student athletes. We've got a handful of guys with perfect GPAs, and 3 out of 4 of them are European players, and English is their second, sometimes even their third language. And they're very driven. And they've got a lot riding when they're, you're so far away from home. And it's been a marriage made in heaven in terms of we couldn't be happier with how it's turned out. And, it's like I said, it's international, it's American international, and we're certainly proud of our guys.
You're now in your 5th season, and right about the same time you came back to the program, You also moved into the Mass Mutual Center. I remember, 15, 16 years ago, seeing AIC play at the Olympia Ice Center, and now to see the terrific facility you have downtown, it's quite a leap forward. What has it meant for you to be able to have not only the better facility and the exposure there, but also what seems to be a pretty good relationship with the AHL Springfield Thunderbirds?
It's been outstanding on every level. And, it's 1 mile up the road from campus. So from a convenience standpoint, our guys are at the rink in 5 or 7 minutes. And, the MGM and the Mass Mutual Center, they treat us like a pro team. And, we have great ice times in terms of practice and ice availability. And obviously, in terms of recruiting, and, we can bring a kid into a professional arena. We've got a great locker room and a great setup. And, obviously all those things are factors into, how we've been able to do this.
More with AIC head coach Eric Lang in a moment. First, this word from the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
Every time you show up, every time you make your presence heard, whether you clap your hands or stomp your feet, lead the chant or join the chorus. However you choose to be a fan, you make the game.
The NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 to get your tickets today.
We're back with American International head coach Eric Lang. You mentioned about having kind of two second lines and two third lines. And I think if you talk to a lot of coaches around Atlantic hockey, that's a way they would describe their teams. It's still maybe not the blue chip players that make it into the league. As far as competitiveness in Atlantic hockey with non-conference teams, both for AIC and for the league in general, where does the league need to go to maybe take the next step and be considered on a par with some of the other leagues?
I think what's happening now is because we're at the full allotted scholarship, I think we've got to have a couple of years and let that take time to develop in terms of just being number for number. When we play against these, bigger schools in theory, I do think we're going to, and we haven't held up our end of the bargain. We've really struggled at a conference, and that's something that we're going to have to look at as a program. Throw AIC out, but our league is, every year it seems like we're winning more and more games. We win them on the road. We're getting more home games, and there's so much parity right now in our sport. It's really one of the only. I mean, you even look at Canisius last year, an 11th place team, and they're able to sweep the likes of a North Dakota. It's really, really close. We're all looking for a competitive advantage. And I think some of it right now is a little bit of belief, to believe we can go up and down the ice with a top Hockey East school or a top Big Ten school. And but we're closer than ever. And I do think when it's all said and done, an Atlantic hockey team is going to be in the Frozen Four here and making a real threat to be a national contender.
Let's go back to the conference. How tough is it to compete in conference, considering all the teams know each other just so well?
I've got a very good relationship with Brian Riley, and sometimes we say the physicality inside of our league is far superior than the physicality when we're getting outside of our league. And I think you make a great point. We know each other so well. We've got a lot of tenured coaches in here that have been here a long time and have had a lot of success. And it's, you got to scratch and claw, and you got to fight for every, point there is. And, this thing will come down to the last weekend to see who's getting a bye, who's going to be your league champion, who's going to be having home ice. And I think it's the beauty of our league is I don't think we have an absolute substantiated top, and I don't think we've got an absolute substantiated bottom. I think, on any given night, 1 through 11, anybody beats anybody, and you've really got to be ready to play, You got to be able to bring it every weekend. And I think that's the reason we've had some success in the NCAA tournament. The team that represents Atlantic hockey has been battle tested. They've won a couple of 1-game sets, and they've earned their way into the tournament. And, I think it's 3 of the last 5 years our league has done really, really well, and we hope it continues.
This offseason, Atlantic hockey became the 4th Division I men's league to adopt the 3-on-3 and the shootout. Now, you've been involved in one of those. Some thoughts on that, as how that's gone, and also looking at getting those extra points here and there in the standings and the impact that has.
This isn't going to be popular, but I'm not, I'm probably in the minority. I still believe that there's a such thing as a good tie, and I'll just give you our example of it. Us in Niagara play a 0-0 tie, 60 minutes, 65 minutes. It had a real playoff type intensity to it. And then, we actually killed a 5-minute major in overtime. So we played 4-on-3 for the entire 5 minutes. And then, we wind up losing in the shootout, and which was a terrific hockey game. I'm not at the point where I believe that that's a great way to end a hockey game. And I've said this before, we're the only sport that does it. Baseball doesn't go into a home run derby, and football doesn't start kicking field goals to decide it. And the NBA doesn't do a slam dunk contest. It's kind of, and I get it. And there's certainly an entertainment value to it. And like I said, I know I'm in the minority, but it's going to still take some time for me to get used to. I just think when you preach the things you have to preach to be successful in terms of blocking shots and back checking and boxing out and everything that goes into playing the most wonderful team sport, to then end it with a one-on-one breakaway competition, it still doesn't feel right to me. And I think it works for the NHL over 82 games. I'm not sure over 28 games that it's the best solution we have when, as I said, we're fighting, scratching, and clawing for every single point that's available. And it's probably a little unpopular amongst our league, but that's just honestly how I kind of feel about it. And the other thing that we really need to look at is, if you get a tie, you get 50% of the value last year. So if there's 2 points available, you get a tie, you get 50% value. And now if you get a tie and you don't pick up that extra point, you've now inherited 33% value of the sport, of the points allotted. And, it's going to add up, and someone is not going to get home ice. Someone's going to win a league championship, and you might be looking at a couple of shootouts on bad ice that have determined this.
Eric, as you mentioned that, Ed and I were talking on an earlier podcast this week about a similar situation, and we were referencing the NHL system for points, and the fact that if you get a win in those situations, you get 100% of the points. If you get a loss once you get to overtime, you get 50% of the points. Would that make it more comfortable? Because we were just referencing the fact that I think it was Omaha this past week went to 2 overtime games against Denver, yet came out with only 2 out of 6 points in their league standings because they couldn't win that kind of special 3-on-3 or shootout situations. Would it make it easier for coaches to feel better if they could at least know that they get 50% of the points?
My problem probably is less with and I love that. And the 3-on-3 component I really like. My problem lies within the shootout, which has such an unbelievable value, and the point system. So you guys are spot on. Like I said, like last year, if you got a win and a tie and you got 3 out of 4 points, it just had I'm not I'm an AIC grad, so my math isn't as good as some of these other guys. But I do know if you get 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 2, the 1 out of 2 is certainly a better proportion, and you add that up over the course of the season, and it's going to be a factor. It's going to be a factor in our league this year, and we hope we're on the right side of it.
Let's get back to a little bit of last season, Eric, and obviously a trip to the NCAA tournament, championships, trophies, all of that sort of stuff. But I want to get into the NCAA tournament, winning that game, that first round game, advancing to a regional final. playing on national TV. What did that do for the exposure of this team, this program, particularly in the alumni's eyes?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't have a word, and I certainly couldn't understate what that has meant for our institution, what it's meant for our program, what it's meant for recruiting, what it's meant for our community. And we're drawing a little better than we ever have in Springfield. And you know what? I walk into a Starbucks now with my AIC jacket, and maybe 3-4 years ago they weren't really sure what that was, but the mayor has embraced us, and we've really had tremendous momentum, not only on campus but in the community, where it's been really quiet for us. And it's one of those victories that we hope can propel us. And as we anybody can kind of do anything once, and now it's up to us to kind of capture this momentum and be a team that could be near the top of Atlantic hockey here for a couple of years in a row.
And here you are. I'm going to talk about maybe a couple of more victories. You have, by my count, 4 games in hand on Sacred Heart. You're 6 points behind in the standings, which, doing the math, is just 2 games in a 3-point league. What do you feel your team's challenges are ahead to get back to that point where you can compete for number 1? I mean, obviously you're in the running, but you want to probably have a chance to be the repeat team. I know every coach would love that. What do you have to do the rest of the way?
I think we're set up where we're 6 on the road and 5 at home. And, quite honestly, the weekends start going fast and furious now. And right now this is going to be a boring answer, but it's all about Robert Morris right now. And we've got 11 Game 7s left, and that's the way we look at our season. We started with 28 Game 7 situations. We're now down to 11. I think the first half of the year, or the beginning of the year, you really want to set yourself up and be playing your best hockey down the stretch. And, we've kind of banked a pretty good first half, and we are set up for success in terms of if we take care of our business. We're certainly like to be a team that is up near the top and is fighting for a bye, and, let the chips fall where they may late. But that it's important for us to be finishing, in that top 5 and avoid the first round Atlantic hockey playoff where anything can happen. So we've never been a metric driven program. We don't have goals in terms of how many wins or where we want to finish. But we, like I said, I feel like we are set up for success here. As you mentioned, we've got some games in hand. I think we've got the top winning percentage in the league right now, or right near the top. And you know what? We've got to continue to put points in the bank and let the weekends dwindle away. And I'm certain this thing will come right down to the end, as it always does.
Well, it probably will, and it does start with, as you called it, a Game 7 this Friday night, and followed by another one on Saturday night. Heading out to the Pittsburgh area, Robert Morris, the opponent this weekend. Eric, best of luck, safe travels out there, and good luck the rest of the way. Hopefully we'll be touching base with you around the postseason time if all success goes your way.
I appreciate you having me on, guys. Thanks for all you do for our sport.
Jim, in his 5th season at American International, Eric Lang has brought that program forward a ton.
And for one thing, I can't believe it's been 5 years already, and he really has. Obviously, moving the team out of the Olympia Ice Center and into the Mass Mutual Center, that's a huge move. The steps that they've taken in recruiting, he mentioned the international recruiting. They've been able to do it with a very high level of success. That's another big step. And then obviously the on-ice product. And I think of the celebrations last year when they clinched the regular season, when they won the championship, when they advanced in an NCAA tournament game. Just such a monumental season for AIC, and the way that they handled themselves, the way that they approached everything. You got to think that even go back to the regional final, they were so darn close to a Frozen Four. They played a very good game in that regional final, just weren't able to earn the victory. But I loved everything that AIC did last year, and I liked the class with which Eric Lang approaches the game. He's thoughtful. He just seems to be one of those coaches that approaches the game the right way, and that's something I really not just enjoy, but I respect.
And he hit the nail on the head on where the league needs to get to be competitive with the other leagues, and that is a couple more years of scholarships. Now, obviously, you go to a school like Michigan or Boston College or Denver or North Dakota, you're going to see several NHL draft picks on the roster. Other teams in those leagues, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5. You won't see any in Atlantic hockey. When they can get to the point where there are 2 or 3 or 4 draft picks being recruited to those schools, you'll see parity with the rest of the conferences.
There's no doubt. Those days are coming. You even start to look at some of the early NHL rankings for the next couple of years, and there's some Atlantic hockey recruits, in the central scouting rankings now, and that's something you didn't see 5 years ago. I do think scholarships makes a big difference. Facilities has made a huge difference, and it will continue to. The more that teams can improve where they're playing and put themselves more on par. This, you got to think of where this league came from 20 plus years ago when it was the MAC, and it was thought of how do we keep hockey, make it a Division I sport, but spend as little money as possible. Well, that's out the window, and I think that's something that Bob DiGregorio, the commissioner, and a lot of the coaches, athletic directors should take a lot of pride in the fact that they've gotten schools to invest in a sport that 20 years ago, athletic directors and presidents had no intention of ever spending money on. So I like the way this league is going. I like the way a program like American International is heading. It's bright for the future of not just Atlantic hockey, but college hockey in general.
And you're absolutely right. And I think another part of that is the member institutions. When they see the value of national exposure for the name of their college on the national scene, it makes a huge difference. This episode has been brought to you by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.